Well, straight out of seminary, when I was still wet behind the ears, I came face to face with this man who had the most complex marital situation that I'd ever imagined, a situation for which seminary had not prepared me. This was a terrific young man. He was in his 30s, very kind, warm, outgoing guy, bright mind, deeply faithful, cared about God, cared about God's church, seeking to have a Christian marriage, the kind of guy you'd trust with your life. Unfortunately, he'd married a woman who was the exact opposite. She was not kind, she was not faithful, she was not a deeply loving kind of person. But for whatever reason, he was head over heels in love with this woman and would do anything for her. But he was not blind to her negative attributes. But he had this idea, and sometimes young people have this idea. He had this idea that once we're in this covenant of marriage, I'm going to change her. I'm going to change her. I'm going to make her different. She is going to come to know my love, my sacrificial, constant, consistent, dependable love so deeply that it will reshape her heart and her life. That's what he believed. But into their third month of marriage, he discovered that she was 6 months pregnant and that there was no doubt that it was not his child. And so he thought back 6 months and he thought, well, 6 months ago we were already committed to marriage. 6 months ago we were head over heels in love. 6 months ago we were giddy with affection for one another. Or maybe we weren't. He was so hurt, devastated, angry, full of tears. He confronted her. They had this terrible confrontation, and then for days they had nothing to say to each other. But then he forgave her. He forgave her, he embraced her, and he raised that other man's child as his own because he loved her so much. About 2 years into the marriage, this young man discovered that she was again in an intimate relationship with another man. His brother told him, "She's been dating my friend," and gave him clear, undeniable evidence. And again, he was just devastated, brokenhearted. He thought they were so happy. She seemed to love being his wife. She seemed to love being a mama and all the fun things they did together. He thought it was good. But clearly it wasn't enough for her. Here she was with yet another man in another relationship. How many others had she been in that he didn't know about? He happened to know about this one because of his brother, but maybe there were others. Could he ever trust her? Could he ever just have her for himself and not have to share her with other men? Once again, there was anger, tears, but he forgave her because he loved her so much. The marriage moved along, and it seemed to really get to a good place. He was surprised that it did. I mean, she seemed to really be at a happy place, to be a devoted mother and wife. He felt like he was seeing real transformation happening in her life, that God was using his love to make her better. Until he discovered that she was pregnant again by another man. And that's when she came to see me. That's when he came to see me. Now let me ask you, if you had been me in that instance, if you were the priest and you were sitting with this guy telling you this terrible tale, what would you say? Would you say, just stick in there, buddy. You be true even though she's not? Would you say that? Would you say you carry the weight of the covenant even though she can't? You continue to raise the children of other men, knowing that she's not going to be able to do it without you. You keep loving her even though you know she doesn't love you, at least in the way you want her to love you. Just stick in there. Is that what you tell him? I bet not. I bet not. I imagine that you, like me, would want to tell him that he's gone way beyond the call of duty. You can't have a covenant when only one person is committed to it, buddy. You'd probably say to him, you didn't sign up to be a doormat to this woman's unbridled desires. It's crazy for you to think that you've got to raise the children of other men. You deserve to receive the kind of love that you're giving. Wouldn't you say that? Isn't that what ought to be said? Under most circumstances, I think that's what ought to be said. But here's the thing. The man in this story I just told you is God. And the woman is us. We are the ones who've not been true to the covenant. We are the ones who have taken His love over and over and then turned our backs on it. This is the story of the prophet Hosea, part of which was just read as our first lesson. Hosea took a wife named Gomer. Unfortunate name, but that was the name. Gomer. She was a woman of ill repute, a woman who chased after other men, a woman who had children by other men that were then raised by Hosea. And the prophet tells us that this relationship reflects the nature of the relationship between God and His people Israel. That God chose Israel, knowing that she was this frail, broken little clan. He still chose her. He entered into this covenant with her, loved her with all of His heart. Yet she took His love. She luxuriated in His many blessings and then gave herself away to empty idols, prostituted herself to other gods. No matter how much He loved her, no matter how many times He forgave her, no matter what He did to show His love, she continued to give herself away to other gods. She pretended to care about the covenant. She went through all the motions of love without the earnest commitment of love. In chapter 6 of Hosea, it says, "What shall I do with you, O Ephraim, O Judah? Your love is like a morning cloud, like the dew that goes away early. What I desire is steadfast love, not sacrifice, the knowledge of God rather than burnt offerings." In other words, God is saying to Israel, going through the motions of commitment, like paying for burnt offerings at the temple or sacrificing some animal to appease God, is not what I want. What I really want from you is a genuine love for me. For you to know me at a deep level and to care more about me than all the other things in this world. And isn't that the message of God to His people today? Same God, same people, same message. God pours out His love for us in the cross of Christ, showing us how far He is willing to go for us, experiencing pain and death as a symbol of His love, to stand against the evils of this world for our sake, extending to us this opportunity to be in this deep, sacred, covenantal relationship with Almighty God, to experience His love so deeply that nothing in this world can destroy us. Yet, even though we go through the motions of love, even though we give the outward appearance of commitment, we show up in church, we give tithes, we attend Bible studies, at the end of the day, is there really a depth of commitment there? Are we allowing that love to so touch our hearts that it transforms our lives? That we are truly becoming different people? We go through the motions, but I think, if we're honest, we withhold the fullness of our hearts. Perhaps at some level we love God. We need Him. We want to know in difficult moments that He's there. But we don't want to have to give too much of ourselves away. We want to hold on to what we want to hold on to. We certainly don't want to end up like fanatics, right? We don't want to be those crazy people that talk about God all the time. You know, even at social gatherings, you're trying to have a martini at the party and he's talking about God. You know those? We don't want God to be the center stage, for heaven's sake. determining everything that we do, the friends we make, the way we spend our money, how we do business, how we love, how we give ourselves away. We don't want him to dominate our lives. When I was at Vanderbilt, I became friends with this Roman Catholic nun. Her name was Sister Joy Miller, and it was a great name for her because she was a joyful person. Joy was the kind of person who always saw good in everybody and everything, that kind of person. But I found her interesting because the more I got to know her, the more I realized that God was truly the center of her life. I mean, her life revolved around God the way the earth revolves around the sun. You know, every time she sat down for a meal with us, you know, she'd cross herself and give thanks before the meal, and then cross herself and give thanks after the meal. And it wasn't just a quick little God is great, God is good. I mean, there was real prayer going on there. When she walked in the mornings, she told me she kind of walked a rosary. She said, I'd either take a psalm with me or the Our Father, and I'd walk in cadence to those things like this. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Who does that? You know. I asked her one time, we'd gotten into this business of playing cards before dinner, and I said, hey, why don't you come join us for cards tonight? And she said, what time is that? I said, 5 o'clock. She said, oh, no, darling. She said, 5 in the morning and 5 in the evening. I have an appointment with the Lord. That's just His time for an hour. It's just prayer. Wow, 5 in the morning, 5 in the evening. Appointment with the Lord, just prayer. And of course, you know, I mean, she was a nun. She had given herself to a vow of poverty and chastity and obedience. So those things didn't get in the way of God. In so many ways, she was truly married to God. But of course, she's a nun, right? I mean, you expect that from nuns. We're not nuns. So let me give you another example. I think of that young soldier that I held up in a sermon a while back. The one on whom the movie Hacksaw Ridge was based. The one who would not shoot a gun because of his commitment to God. The one who nonetheless joined the army to stand with his fellow men in battle because of his commitment to God. The one who suffered constant abuse by the army because of his passivity, yet kept going to God for perseverance through all of that and stuck it out. The one who climbed up and down Hacksaw Ridge under constant enemy fire to rescue 75 men. Why? All because of his clear commitment to God. That young soldier was not a nun, but God was at the center of his universe. Or I think just about plain old American business people out there. I sometimes think about the guy that owns Chick-fil-A and the guy that owns Hobby Lobby. And I think that those guys, you know, they could be making a whole lot more money if they'd be open on Sunday. I can't think of the number of times where I'm out on the highway and I think, dadgummit, Chick-fil-A's not open on Sunday. You know? They could be rolling more cash in, but no, because of their commitment to God, they will not be open on Sunday. You probably also know that they've made all kinds of other commitments in the way they deal with the running of their business and with their employees, and people have sued them because of those Christian commitments over and over, and they've stood firm. There are a million ways to be true to this covenant we've made with God. Ways to be committed that is so much more than just showing up in church. Making the kind of commitment that is like marriage, that has a level of intimacy to it, that is exclusive, that is regular in its communication, in its love-giving. The kind of relationship that shapes our daily lives, our priorities, what we love, how we love, our politics, our way of doing business, how we give ourselves to others. So let's go back to that story at the beginning of the sermon, now that you know that the man is God and the woman is us. That wonderful man, married to the woman who is constantly chasing others, just like us. The woman who did not deserve his love. The woman who took the love, who allowed him to over and over shower her with his love, but who did not really let that love touch her deeply. That young man trying over and over God to give her the greatest gift anyone could ever hope for, lavish, undeserved, dependable, consistent love. a love that he believed would transform and remake her if she ever let it truly penetrate her heart. But she would not. She kept it at arm's length. She kept it at a superficial level because ultimately she did not want it to change her, to possess her, to remake her. Are we that woman? Are we the one who will not allow God's love to touch us too deeply? Because ultimately, we don't want to change.